Hey, folks, welcome to the ninth episode of the Knock and Talk Show. I'm your host, Patrick Faulkner, and this week we have guest Pearce Cucchissi, a former Army Ranger turned optimizational coach. We're going to be discussing rugby, Ranger School, and Hungarian killers. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this. All right, folks, welcome to the Knock and Talk Show. I am Patrick Faulkner, your host. Today, this is episode number 9. I can't believe we have 9 already. Today's guest, I'm super excited about having him on the show. Former Army Ranger turned coach. I'll let him get into that in just a minute. But we have Pearce Cucchissi, and I know I probably still killed it. But yep, Pearce, good. Welcome to the show, brother. So excited to have you on.
Appreciate it. Awesome to be here. Always good to have little opportunities to chat.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to share stories, the funny stories, some of the outrageous stuff, and we'll get into anything and everything wherever the rabbit leads us. Yeah. So before we get into the stories, take a minute or so and tell us who Pearce is, what you did before the Army, what you did in the Army when you served, and then a little bit about what you're doing now, and then we'll go into more detail about that toward the end of the show.
Sounds good. Let's get started. I just before the military, I was actually in college. I played rugby in college. I was kind of making that decision in high school. Hey, do I go straight military? Do I take the time in college? Who knows what was the right decision, but at the time it was good to take a little extra time. So I studied business. The only place I wanted to be was sunny Southern California, the closest place I could get to the beach. I'm from the Northeast and didn't want to deal with winters, wanted to get out, wanted to surf, mountain bike, do all the fun stuff. So college out here in Los Angeles, and then right after that sort of did as much digging as I could on all of the special operations units within all branches of the military. Talked to as many people as I could, was really, really fortunate that some guys just happened to hit me back and jump on the phone and chat with me. That was really helpful. So now I try to do a little bit of that mentoring for the younger people coming in as well.
Awesome.
Through all the research, decided the 75th Ranger Regiment was my path. That's where I wanted to go. So had about maybe a 6-month window after college, made the decision, got an option 40 contract, which is the contract in the Army, which gives you a slot to try out essentially at Ranger assessment and selection. Did all my training by myself in my backyard, figuring it all out. Went into the Army, went through all the programs you need to get to the 75th Ranger Regiment. Loved it. Well, best experiences in my life, worst experiences, most fun, least fun, all the extremes. Did combat deployments to Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan. Got to lead teams. Really awesome experience. And now with a lot of things shut down, I decided sort of my time to get out was in early 2020.
Okay.
Back to Los Angeles. And yeah, now I do performance coaching. I work with executives, athletes, everybody in between, passing on a lot of the wisdom that we learned in the military, and then a lot of the wisdom that I learned in sort of the reintegration side as well. So that's where I am. I got a semi-ocean view from where I'm sitting.
Nice. All right. So I guess you're living up to the mantra of Rangers lead the way.
Trying, or especially trying to lead the way a little bit, as I was sort of one of the earlier in sort of my peer group to actually leave the military. So hopefully providing a good example in some ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's it was right for you. So, that's as long as you're doing something with that decision, it's the right one.
Yeah, and that was kind of the thing as well, as when I first left, I think I found myself in a place that a lot of other guys do, in a job that doesn't have the same purpose, doesn't have the same camaraderie, really lacks a lot of the things that you got so attached to in military life. And so now I've changed that. I'm like, these are my specific values that I want, and sticking to it. So everything since then has been a good change.
Good. Yeah. I mean, that was always difficult. I mean, I served in the Air Force in the 90s, non-combat time. I was an avionics guy. So, I was miles upon miles upon miles away from anything that could even be considered action, if you will. But I just did 4 years. And when I got out, I had no idea what to do. And I almost instantly missed the razzing and the camaraderie and the brotherhood and the friends you're just surrounded by the same people day in and day out, especially if you lived on base in the dorms. You went to work with those people. You came home and you lived next to those people. You went to eat with those people. You went on trips with those people. And then you're like, I hate the military. I'm tired of the military. It's time to move on. So you leave.
Yep.
But then you leave. You leave everything. And that can be hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think what we fail to realize when you're in the military is acceptance, and a tribal living is like a basic human need. And when you leave that and you no longer have that, whether you really think it or feel it or not, your body has a specific reaction to, ooh, now I'm outside of the tribe. This is not a good place to be.
I agree with you.
And so many, I don't think I've talked to a veteran that hasn't had somewhat of that experience, right? You're like, I'm so ready to leave. You leave, and then you realize, wow, there is really something missing there. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't bring that something back. And I think that's sort of a process every vet needs to work on. But yeah, that community, that tribe is huge. It's massive. Yeah,
it is. So within tribes, there's always the jester, right? There's always the town clown. Going back to rugby days, because I've never met a rugby player. The closest thing to rugby was backyard football in like elementary school. It starts off as tag, and then it's just kill whoever has the ball,
which is a great game.
It's great. That's my only experience. So obviously, it's not real experience in rugby. Is there a funny instance, whether it was in practice or in a game, somebody losing an eyeball or swallowing teeth, something that happened during a rugby match or practice that sort of stands out to you that kind of makes you smirk, like that smirk right there?
There's a couple. Rugby is an awesome sport. I didn't start playing until midway through high school. I really wish I started earlier. One of the best sports, probably I would say the best sport in terms of camaraderie. There's two reasons, and then I'll get into the funny stuff.
Okay.
One is within rugby, a lot of the things that you do as a team are literally as a team, like linking on with the other guys and creating one unit that moves down the field. The other thing is there is a tradition in rugby to party with the other team after every game. It is like a strict thing that happens. Like there's the game, and then there's kegs, and there's both teams.
Wow.
Every time. Believe that tradition probably comes, more from Europe, where rugby is more popular, but some great stories there. On the field stuff was typically, the funniest was around concussions, which happen in rugby games.
Okay.
And I don't know how funny this seems to other people, but when you imagine you are a collegiate football player and you're standing in the formation and you ask the guy next to you, what do I do? Where do I stand? Right before the play is going to start. Guy looks at you like, what do you mean? You've been practicing for you. That's the most ridiculous question anybody could ever, like the quarterback saying, where do I stand before the play starts?
Wow.
Right? Then you say, you yell over to the sidelines and say, "Get this guy out of the game. He's severely concussed." Another one, great friend of mine, made a beautiful kick. And in rugby, you can make the kicks while things are moving, very similar to football. And plays over. 30 seconds later, I go up to him. I go, "Man, that was an awesome kick. He crushed it." He goes, "I made a kick?" No, zero recollection of anything.
Wow.
He made the kick and got hit really hard from behind, concussion right there. So
Wow.
that's some of the on the field funny stuff. It happened more times than just that. But yeah, concussions cause some major confusion and funny things coming out of people's mouths.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. So during the Olympics, this past Summer Olympics, my wife and I watched rugby for the first time, and there are some massive hits in that. And you know, we had phones out and we were trying to look up rules. Like, wait a minute, this is nothing like football. Why are they doing that? Why are they only passing backwards? So there was like a lot of sudden immersion into rugby. It was a fun game to watch.
Yeah, it's always moving.
Yeah,
it's like watching football, but in the way that soccer's played, where it never stops.
Yeah, it was like fun to watch.
And if you're Olympics, you're watching. Well, there's probably 7 people on the field. The traditional game is 15, and it looks like an absolute mess. But I think if you understand the basic principles, it's actually a lot simpler to understand than, let's say, American football.
Okay.
But it looks crazy.
It did look crazy. High speed, low drag, kind of crazy. Controlled chaos, I guess, is what I would throw in. Yeah. Ever play against a team that did a haka before?
No. But before I ever played rugby, that was one of, I'm watching the hype videos. I basically wanted to play strictly because I wanted to hit people wherever my headspace was at. In high school, I would just look up hit highlights and I was saying that's all I want to do. And then I learned about the Haka, which is sort of a New Zealand war dance that the professional team, the All Blacks, do. And the intensity is wild. You don't really see that in any other sport.
Yeah, no. So I got lost somewhere in YouTube one day, and ended up in a Haka video watching high school students doing a tribute to a teacher that passed away, and I guess it was in New Zealand. And it was the first time I'd ever seen it, and it was very intense. And then so I went down to the next video, the next Haka video, and the next one, and the next one, and then I saw that there was a rugby team that did it before every match. So I didn't know if that was strictly just that team or if that was sort of now a shared tradition. It's more of a New Zealand thing. I think I've seen a couple other places do it, but it's a very native New Zealand tradition. I believe that the natives there are the Maori, and yeah, in terms of a performance, it is probably, I don't think I've ever seen anything where people put that much intensity into it. No,
it's pretty cool to watch. If you go on YouTube and you look up New Zealand All Blacks Haka.
And it's Hakka. Is it 2 Ks or 1 K?
2 K or 1 K. I'm sure YouTube will figure it out.
YouTube would figure it out. Yeah. All right. So high school, then college rugby, and then you say, all right, 75th Ranger. That's where I'm going. Me being, an Air Force guy, I don't know a whole lot about the Army or the Army recruitment process. I mean, I went into a recruiting station. The Air Force recruiter gave me this encyclopedia of jobs and said, pick one, come back next week. So that's what I did. Were you able to drill down your request specifically for that unit?
Yeah, so I did the complete opposite. Not saying it's any better than yours, but I did as much research as possible. Just so on the overall side, 75th Ranger Regiment is a special operations unit within the Army. Just like the Navy has SEALs, the Marines have MARSOC, the Air Force has PJs and combat controllers, Army has Rangers and Green Berets. You can say all same but different, right? So I did all my research on those, and I did everything basically online and figured out, okay, what I need to do is go into Recruiter and tell them I want an 11X option 40 contract. That is a basic way of saying I want to be an infantryman with the option to go to Airborne School and Ranger assessment and selection, given I pass all the prerequisites.
Okay.
It solidifies my spot. So I walked into, it took me about 4 to 5 recruiters to get what I wanted. So I'd go into one place, I said, I want a 11X option 40 contract. I'm ready to go, I'm fit. Whenever you have it, let me know. And a lot of them, some didn't even know what that was, didn't know what Rangers were. They were like, they were trying to get guys to go to Green Beret selection, right? So they would say, oh, you could do this program. And then some told me that they couldn't get the contract. So it's a much smaller pool. And obviously the Army wants to fill the jobs that people don't want, right?
Right.
Cooks and techs and whatever. So I kept going around, and I finally found a recruiter in Inglewood, California, who happened to be an infantry guy, and he was the first guy that got it. I walked in there, I said, I'm college educated, I've been training, I'm ready to go. I want an 11X option 40 contract. When you have it, I'll sign the papers. And he basically said, okay, I'll call you. And I walked out. That was it. And it was probably 2 weeks later, he called me. He said, took a few calls, but I got it.
Wow.
Let's do this.
Nice. Yeah. So I went to, I was in Birmingham, Alabama at the time, and there was a strip mall that had all the recruiters in it. And I just walked into one, listened to their spill, walked into the next, listened to this one. My father was Army. My grandfather was Army Air Corps. My uncle was Air Force, and they were all saying, do Air Force. But I wanted to listen to everybody. Like you, I wanted sort of a well-rounded option table to pick what I thought was best for me. And what I thought was funny was the Navy recruiter said, we have more planes than the Air Force. Don't even walk in there. I was like, I don't know that that's true.
Sounds like an odd claim, but
it does. Yeah. I've never verified one way or the other. I don't know. I ended up picking the Air Force, and but they gave me that encyclopedia, and I went through page by page and found what I thought was the coolest thing ever: attack control systems on the F-16 fighter jet. I thought that was really cool. Until I got out, and there was absolutely nothing to do with an attack control system from the F-16 in Delta or United or. So you get the slot, you get the phone call. What happens next?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that about the F-16. My younger brother is in school right now to fly the F-35, the Marine Corps.
Wow,
which is pretty cool. So
that is really cool. Congratulations.
Yeah, so I get the call, and you set a date to go to MEPS, the processing station. And so I just continue training. At this point, I've made the commitment. I've done all of the mental stuff. I've done all the physical stuff. I am ready. But in most cases, especially with the special operations contracts, is they kind of pool you in basic training classes. So I had to wait a little bit. The whole process was probably 2 months until I actually left. You go to MEPS. That's an interesting experience. Right, so MEPS is where they do all the medical processing. I can't remember what the acronym stands for. The military's full of them. But I'm in there, and I'm in a bit of a different world in there, and doing things like stripping down and doing the duck walk. People that don't know that, everybody in the military knows that one. And I kind of get the feeling like, what am I doing?
Right. Yeah.
Like, you're thrown in with everybody, and I don't mean this to be negative at all, but in my head, I'm like, special ops, Rangers, highest of the high, and I'm after college, I'm slightly older, and I'm in there with everybody. And you have people that look like they should be there, people that look like they should be nowhere near the building, and everything in between. After that, it was good to go at MEPS. Just took some time off, quit my job for about a month, just a little time off and a little more training, and then do the cycle all over again and ship out to beautiful Fort Benning, Georgia for basic training.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, and there is a place, I don't know if you have this in the Air Force. There's a place called 30th AG, which doesn't mean anything, but it's like you're processing. It's before you go to basic training.
No.
It is. I tell most guys this who call me and they're like, I want to do, special ops in some way. They go, you're going to go to this place called 30th AG. It's going to be the worst place you've ever been in your life, and you're going to question every decision that you've made up until this point.
Okay.
I promise that it gets better from there. But in that week that you're there, don't bail or lose your mind. There's also no way out.
Okay. Yeah. You've signed the contract. You're owned now.
It is 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. of standing, perfectly still, standing in line, getting medical tests, getting yelled at. Yeah, it was an interesting place. After that, everything was good.
We stepped off the bus, walked in a single file line, got into a very, very unorganized formation, and the yelling and beratement and browbeating with the campaign hats began.
Interesting. That really didn't happen to us until after we went through this. It was a little bit, but once you got to basic training, that's when the shark attack, as they call it, happens.
Yeah, as soon as we stepped off the bus.
Nice. I like that.
But when I went through, it's a little different now. When I went through, it was only 6 weeks long. So, I mean, they had to jam as much as they could in 6 weeks. So now I think they're at 8 weeks. So
I think mine was, I think they're up to around, for us, they combined infantry and basic training all at once. So it was all infantrymen.
Okay.
So it's around double that now.
Okay. Oddly enough, my son is in Army basic training right now.
No way. Okay.
Yeah.
What's his plan?
He is in 25 Bravo, some computer network specialist, something to that degree.
That's great, man. The military pays for training, pays for school. When you get out with a job that.
Yeah, a lot smarter than the way I went in, trying to pick something that sounded cool instead of something that was that I could also do when I got out. So
he was smart. It's not like doing raids helped me much in the civilian world either. So
the discipline though, right?
So there are obviously a lot of characteristics that have helped me a ton, but the actual action of putting explosives on the door and going through buildings, not so much.
No, I guess not. I mean, unless you entered a SWAT team, or
yeah. Of course, there are ways to transition that into things, of that nature too. And I did consider that at some points.
So now you're a couple weeks in. You've made it through the 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. stand, get poked, stand, sit, stand, get yelled at. Anything stand out? Because I typically ask this question of most of the military veterans that come on the show to sort of compare my stories from the super easy chair force to the other branches that had a little more difficult time in basic training and then their AIT. We had the guy that curled up on the latrine floor, sucking his thumb, yelling for mommy in the first week because Air Force basic training was too difficult for this poor guy. Anything like that from, having the trash can thrown down the bays, anything that stands out that, it makes you chuckle.
We did have a couple people try to quit. Of course, in the very beginning, you can't. Eventually, you can. We had 2 guys actually run away. And they found them on a railroad track in Alabama. And like you could imagine the embarrassment they had to have showing back up and walking through the formation of, I don't know how many of us were there, like 150, right? Of the guys that had escaped in the middle of the night somehow.
The great escape to be brought back.
And I really can't remember exactly how they got caught, but it was really, really stupid. Like one of the guys' grandmas spilled the beans, turned them in. Something like that. Like he's not supposed to be there. Yeah. So that was a good one. Then there's of course the stories of, you know, first day, they trashed the barracks, garbage cans everywhere, like soap, and you just, you know, it's basically just to mess with you, get you cleaning. One of the ones I thought was good and pretty brutal was, so you have your, I don't know how to describe this. On the bottom floor, there's this big outdoor open bay. Right. And then we had about 2 flights of stairs into our barracks bay, which was basically just one massive room that housed 30 to 40 guys.
Okay.
So the task was all night we would rebuild. We'd take it was all bunk beds and like closets. So we'd rebuild it on the floor below. And then they would say, okay, go to bed. 5 minutes later, blow horns, rebuild it back upstairs. So all night we were taking this entire complex where 30 guys lived, trying to get it down the stairs, getting yelled at, doing push-ups, and rebuilding it on the floor below.
Wow.
That was one of the more creative ones.
Yeah.
I heard of.
So what is your bunk takedown time?
Good question. The disassembling the bunks, this one took a while, right? And then you can't get everybody down the stairs. So we had guys falling downstairs, like bunks like rolling down the stairs.
Oh, God.
Traffic jams, right? Because you're getting yelled at. Some guys can't handle the stress as well. And some guys just accept, okay, we're going to be doing this all night. But the one that was good at was the changing, right? So they would say, all right, you're down in one uniform. Go put your full combat uniform on. Okay, then get into your PT, your fitness uniform, back down the stairs. And that I could do in like a minute or two.
Yeah, you get pretty good at that. Like Clark Kent step into
pretty good at getting naked, putting it back on.
That's right. Real fast. Yep.
Figure out to stuff your shoelaces into your sock so it looks like they're tied.
Yes, that was one of the corners to cut. We did that as well. And then at the end of it, we were told that now they knew it. So now tie them and tuck them, because you can't have your shoelaces showing. So even to this day, whether I'm wearing lace-up boots or lace-up loafers or sneakers, I'm always tucking in the bunny ears so that they don't show. And it's just out of habit now.
I like it. Looks clean.
It does. Yeah. Yeah. That I'm always afraid that maybe Senior Airman Martinez will jump out from somewhere.
Yeah. There's some funny stories. Basic training was interesting. Once again, you're just the environment is different. The entire group of people is very different. Like as I went up throughout the military, it got much more homogenous. The guys were all similar backgrounds, similar levels of fitness, similar smarts. Basic training was all over the place.
Yeah.
So always some hilarious ones there. We would do these runs. Or you had to work your way up to rucking as well. So putting the backpack on your back and up to 12 miles. And I remember one guy, we had to stay in this formation, and probably only halfway through, like an hour and a half long ruck, he shits himself. And it's just like guys behind him were just like dodging it. It's like in his pants. I could smell it the whole way. And
oh, that's awful.
It's brutal. And you're just like,
poor guy.
Say anything. And they just kind of like laughed about it. And so ran like that for like 45 minutes.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Living good.
Oh, that poor guy. And then the guys behind him. That's awful.
I felt worse for the guys I was a couple rows back, but the guys directly behind, they were having a good time.
Says you.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So now we're out of basic, and we've moved into AIT, so infantry school.
Yeah. So what they did for us is they combined the two.
Okay.
So we were at one place. We had one set of instructors. All the instructors were infantrymen, and you basically went through like basic training and infantry school. There was a bit of a distinction, but it was all together. We didn't move anywhere. There were no different instructors.
Okay.
Same group of people. You just got into less basic Army training and more into infantry tactics, which are pretty standard across all units. So that just meant more shooting time, more time out in the field, more time doing like practice missions on a low end, ambush, raid, recon, things like that. Again, a lot of sort of comical stuff just because the group is so misbalanced on levels.
Yeah.
At that point, I led a squad and had a lot of fun. I loved it. I love like the being out in the woods more and playing war games and training. That's the stuff I like.
Yeah, we did that one day in basic. Yeah, one day. We had. I mean, it was the full Army experience. We got to eat MREs and sit in the mud and.
Yeah, that was most days.
Yeah. All right, so we've gone through infantry school, and now you're in Ranger.
So after infantry school is Airborne School.
Okay.
So it's a short window. It's only a 4-week course where you learn how to throw yourself out of a plane in a very uncontrolled fashion. Is
there a high washout rate for that? Or is it mostly medical from like broken limbs from?
It is. The washout rate usually comes beforehand. People just show up and say, not for me. Or in the PT test. After that, physically, it's not that difficult. Skill-wise, it's not that difficult. And then we had a little bit more of a washout on the day, like actually time to jump. People would just get up to the door and say no, thank you.
Yeah. That might be me, because who jumps out of a perfectly good functioning aircraft?
I loved it. It was awesome. Except this was static line jumping, which is slightly less awesome.
Okay.
It's kind of like riding a bull because you have very little control of absolutely anything.
Okay.
And you are, to give you some perspective, your typical skydive, if you went to a skydiving place, you said, I want to jump out, and they put a guy on your back and you go, you're at 13 to 14,000 feet. This is about 1,000 feet.
Oh.
So you think of skydiving itself as being very safe, right? Because you have all of this time, and if anything goes wrong, it's not like you're in a car. There's nothing to hit, okay? So in static line, they changed the game. One, there's very little time before you hit the ground. In free fall, it's about like 6 seconds per 1,000 feet. Now you have a little bit of acceleration time because you just jumped out of the plane, but think 10 seconds or so to be like, okay, my chute's good, pull a reserve if I need to. You're also loaded with 100 plus pounds of gear at some points. So you essentially waddle to the door. You're faced on the guy in front of you's back, and there's a whole line behind you. So you're going one after the other, usually both sides of the plane. So you can imagine how many people are at the air at once. We would do these jumps in the Ranger Regiment and have over 100 people in the air at one time in a small confined space. So you deal with your parachute. There are things to hit, or other people or other parachutes. And then you come in, it's not like a normal skydiving parachute where you can steer and you can flare and you kind of come and land on your feet. You basically pull on these risers and maybe it helps you drift a little bit. And then you hit the ground hard like a limp sack of potatoes and check yourself to make sure nothing's broken. There's some funny stories there of guys getting knocked out once again. So like the first thing you usually do is you land, you check, you grab your gun, and you look around. And I remember one time, this was in Ranger School, we did a jump, and I just see a body getting dragged across the dust because this guy is knocked out. It's a windy day, and he hasn't released his parachute. You have these little clips that basically deflate it. So this thing is just, you see him going across the airfield and people just running after him, trying to like jump and tackle. That's all you went to. I've seen that happen multiple times. I'm sure the instructors at Airborne School have seen it many, many times.
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, you're just, at that point, you're just along for the ride, right? I mean,
you're completely along for the ride. That's what I say. It's like a bull ride. You have pretty much no control over these jumps. It's a pretty good adrenaline rush though. If you're into that, right? You basically just walk out the back of the plane or the side door, get blasted by the wind, and see what happens.
Yeah, I know. I'm the guy that puts the seatbelt on as soon as he sits down on the airplane, and cinches it. My wife and I are watching a TV series on the Smithsonian called Air Disasters. So this is good knowledge so that if I need to quickly egress from a plane, but as long as I have a chute, yeah. As
long as you have a chute, I can't guarantee you won't break a leg, but you survive.
Well, yeah. I'll take a broken leg.
Yeah. So that stuff was fun, and then we get into the more fun stuff like throwing dirt bikes out the back of a plane and things like that, chasing after them.
So like, what was that Chuck Norris movie where they had
just like Chuck Norris? That's what I always
just like Chuck. Yeah, just he was an Air Force guy.
Just like Chuck Norris. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was a law enforcement officer in
makes sense.
Okinawa, I think. But yeah, he was an Air Force guy.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
Chuck, part of the crew.
Yeah. Yeah, so all those stories about Superman wearing Chuck Norris underoos, he was an Air Force guy.
Yeah,
that typically shuts down a lot of that sibling rivalry that me and my Marine friends have, or my Army friends have.
Yeah, there'll always be a little shit talking, a little rivalry going there.
Always, and until I bring up Chuck Norris, and they're like, "Damn."
Everybody loves Chuck.
Everybody does love Chuck. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so where are we at now? So
I guess we're Airborne. We're graduating Airborne School.
Yeah. Okay. And now you're going through.
So from there, you go straight to Ranger Assessment and Selection, which, I describe this, is essentially tryouts. The one that's a little more in the public view is BUDS for the SEALs.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the same thing. It's your initial phase tryout. We went through we were kind of waiting to get into they call it RASP, R-A-S-P, Ranger Assessment and Selection Program. We're waiting to class up, and you're in this pre-RASP area, which is basically working out and studying and getting yelled at. Nothing too crazy. Then you go into RASP, that's kind of what a lot of people would think about as the intense military training environment, even much more than basic and infantry training. You're with a much higher caliber of guys, and it's taken a lot more seriously because the instructors that are there, they only go to be RASP instructors for maybe a year or two, and then they go back to the platoons, and they could be your leadership.
Okay.
So there's no joking around with if you shouldn't be there, they will force you to quit.
Okay.
And it's kind of like no mercy. So I kind of liked it. I liked the environment. But yeah, I mean, we had people quitting in the first 10 minutes. Like the amount of you're carrying all of your stuff, which is weighs a ton. sprinting up and down. They do a thing called bag dumps, which gets a lot of people. You wouldn't expect it. It's basically taking your duffel bags full of all your personal belongings, dumping them, and it has to be like a true dump. Like if you are placing things or doing it slowly because you don't want your stuff to get messed up, you're immediately, you know, doing burpees in the gravel or holding it above your head, whatever it is. Right? So you dump it all out and then you pack it all up. And you've got time hacks and you're getting smoked in between. And this is going on for hours. And some people really just can't handle the chaos of having their stuff thrown around all over the place while they're getting yelled at.
Yeah.
The other tactic I thought was really good by the instructors is they would incite chaos in the best ways that they could. So you'd pick class leadership, like the leader of the class that decides everything. The instructors are like, we're going to go to you. We're going to give you all the information. You're going to tell us what's going on. And so they would pick what they thought the weakest guys to be in leadership positions, specifically to incite chaos and to put major pressure and failure on them so they would eventually quit. So those first couple weeks were just very interesting, utter chaos constantly. Very little sleep. And then you have Hell Week. So all good times.
Yeah, so the little sleep seems like a pretty consistent tactic, right? Sleep deprivation, trying to do their best to simulate what life would be like once you're finished with this and you're in country, on a mission, doing your job, not being able to sleep because of the chaos just outside the fence or just down the street or next building over, whatever. So it seems like that's a pretty common, consistent trial for, I guess, this entire process, right?
Yeah, sleep and food deprivation, and it really, especially the sleep, really gets to people. And, you know, I had known from having a good time and partying in high school and college, like what not getting a good night's sleep can do to you, especially over time. But I had never experienced like 30 minutes, an hour of sleep for like a week period. One, you don't really know if it's possible. Two, you kind of realize, okay, it is possible, but all of these interesting things start happening. Like your cognitive function is just not there anymore.
Right.
Unless you have a big hit of adrenaline because you're in like a really high pressure situation and then you can perform, the second that goes away, you're just gone again. So sleep deprivation is definitely real. If you keep moving, you can stay up. If you don't keep moving, you're falling asleep. So I have had conversations with guys as they fall asleep. This was more, this gets confusing, but Ranger School comes after Ranger selection.
Sure.
Okay. But at Ranger School, right, let's say I'm in a leadership position. You're my guy for the day, and you are on this machine gun pulling security at night. And I've gone up to them and be like, okay, at this time, or these are your directions. This is your sector of fire. At this time, you can eat. At this time, you're going to switch out with Jimmy. Be like, okay, repeat that back to me, those simple instructions. And you'd be like, Jimmy. Mid-conversation. And that happened over and over again. I would also see the food thing really messes with people. And at the later phases of Ranger School, which I guess we're skipping ahead a little bit, you could choose when you ate your 2 MREs a day. So some guys that would save the MREs till the end of the night, the end of the night being you have an hour and a half to sleep after you've been walking miles and miles a day. They would save it and they'd finally get in their sleeping bag and they'd open the MRE that they've been literally talking and dreaming about and fantasizing about for 12 hours.
Oh no.
They would start eating it and then fall asleep like with it in their mouth. And you'd see guys in their sleeping bag with like cookies and whatever the hell else was in those MREs, like all over their chest. Like, oh man, that meal you dreamed about, you never even got to it.
Oh, those poor guys.
So my tactic, if there's anybody out there listening going to Ranger School, was in the final phases when you get to choose when you eat all of your food in the morning at one time.
Okay.
This
Right.
way, it feels more satisfying and it doesn't mess with your mind because there's no other option. You can't think about it the rest of the day because there is no more food.
Okay.
So,
all right. Yeah. All right. Writing this down.
I don't know how much that applies now, but
not well. I mean, you never know. Never know. Yeah, I mean, obviously in avionics school we didn't have that issue. We marched and went to an air-conditioned building and sat in a classroom and learned about wire schematics and part pulls and operation checks, and then marched to the chow hall. And
did you feel fully prepared for the job after those schools? I'm always curious. Okay.
No, because once we completed tech school and we went to our permanent party and got our duty station, there was a whole nother set of like OJT. It was the same as when I finished the police academy and went into what's called field training. They all say, take everything you learned in the school, take those books, throw them away. You're about to learn what we really do. And
very similar to my
experience. The OJT was far more preparational, I guess is the right word to use there. I mean, it was far more effective in learning, for me at least, on the job, putting my hands on the actual part instead of looking at a picture in a book and learning theory of operation that didn't tell me a whole lot, other than this is why it's supposed to work. And if it doesn't work, these are the parts you're supposed to change. Hopefully one of those two will fix it.
Yeah.
But no, I don't, I mean, I guess I had a foundation that had I not gone through those schools that I wouldn't have known, but no, I wasn't prepared.
I just think that's interesting because it's been very common around the circles that I've discussed, is that you think of, you go through all this military training and then you show up and it's like, boom, you do your job. So much of the training happens on the job when you're at the unit from the people that have been there before you. Mm-hmm. So even though I had gone through so much of this training and RASP, Ranger Selection, was this 8-week block, and we get a ton of training and a ton of shooting and tactics and demolitions and everything, still got there, and the culture is absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. Be prepared for the fire hose of information.
Yes, and that literally that's what it's like. It's like opening up the fire hose or the whatchamacallit. I can't even think what it is. Anyway, yeah, trying to drink information from a fire hose, and all you're wanting is like a word.
Yeah.
And you're getting all this information.
It's really the perfect analogy.
It really is. Yeah. So we can fast forward a little bit. Now obviously you've made through Ranger School.
Yes, you go through Ranger Selection, 8 weeks, and then this is a way that they do it actually a little bit differently. In the Ranger Regiment, after Ranger Selection, you actually go to the unit, and you're kind of in this, like, I don't know how to describe it, probation period, or if you're in a fraternity in college, you're like a pledge.
Okay.
Like you're kind of in this not accepted realm yet. You're just like the new guy. And they basically, the new guys are all in competition with each other all the time. You're learning as much as you can. And then based on performance, you then get sent to Ranger School. Ranger School is actually a leadership course. It's not really a special operations course. It's specifically leadership. It's based really on Vietnam. You go to that school. If you fail, you get kicked out. You're no longer a Ranger. You get sent to wherever in the Army. Once you pass Ranger School, and for some guys it's a 2-month school or 3 months with the prep course. For some people it can take 6 to get through. After that, when you come back to your Ranger battalion, then you're kind of like a real member.
Okay.
sort of a real member of the team.
And that's, I guess, when you get the Ranger tab, right?
Yeah, that's when you get the two. Then you have the scroll, which tells you you're in the unit, and then the tab is kind of like, okay, he's relatively solidified here, but you're not. You can always get booted out at any point.
So you brought up something I wanted to ask. If at any point in time in this you get washed out, do you just default back to infantry, or do you default to whatever the Army needs and has to fill?
So luckily, and this was part of my research on choosing units, I knew that if any of that had happened, I would go to an airborne infantry unit.
Okay.
So at least I have that, and that's the main job. The issue with the time I was in the military is if you weren't in a special operations unit, you weren't doing anything, like basically, period. What sucks worse in the Navy, I'm not sure about the Air Force, in the Navy, if you have a SEAL contract, if you fail and wash out of buds, you could be painting ships.
Yeah.
Or I don't know what they do, like something completely irrelevant. So that was one nice thing about the Army, but the cultures were extremely different. What was also another interesting point is the guys who were in my class who got kicked out and had to get sent to regular airborne infantry units ended up outranking me by 2 or 3 positions immediately. Like, I would be just a rifleman on a team, and these guys would be squad leaders, which is like 2 to 3 levels up, or platoon sergeants, because I guess that was just the level of difference between the units.
Wow. Well, we had a couple of PJs get washed out.
Okay.
And end up in avionics.
Interesting. Yeah, so maybe the Air Force does it more similar to the Navy. Yeah.
It may be because they had a higher ASVAB score. And Air Force didn't want to waste that on a clerk position or a law enforcement position or something like that. But, yeah, we had a couple of PJs wash out with us.
I did see some Green Beret washouts get reclassed to cook, which is pretty brutal.
That is bad.
Yeah, especially since most of the guys, they're older. Yeah. A lot of them college educated. We had one guy that was a lawyer, not in law school, a practicing lawyer beforehand. So you get people from all different areas.
Yeah, interesting. So now that you've made it through and you're accepted,
proving yourself every day, but yes, accepted
every day, and you could lose it at any day. Apparently, is this correct?
Yes.
Okay,
yes, any day.
You could become a bastard child and get kicked out. Did you end up going straight overseas as soon as you finished up, or did you spend any time stateside before?
So it is all dependent on where you land in the cycle. So there's 3 Ranger battalions. Since 2001, the Ranger Regiment has been continuously deployed to combat with no breaks. It is just 1st Battalion, 2nd Battalion, 3rd, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and that you deploy in 4-month increments, right? So you get every year, it's 4 months deployed, 8 months training. 4 months deployed, 8 months training, over and over and over again. So some guys are on, 15 deployments. It's so crazy depending on how long they've been there. I consider it lucky because I had, they were just coming off a deployment. Unfortunately, I missed one for Ranger School. I was kind of pissed about. But when I came back, it was a fresh start to a training cycle. So I actually got the full 6 months of training with the unit which ended up being beneficial. And then I deployed. And then it was just the continuation of 8 months back, 4 months deployed, 8 months back, 4 months deployed.
Okay. Sorry, there's a little bit of feedback on my end. That's why I keep looking over here.
Oh, okay. Let me know if you need me to switch in.
I don't think it's you. I think it's my soundboard. Once you got overseas, what was your very first impression? I mean, boots hit the ground. It's desert. It's not Georgia anymore. What was your first impression?
Yeah, so good question. Sorry, there's a siren going by. Just give that 1 second. Okay, so
instant parades.
Yeah, first impression was the first place I ever went was Iraq, northern Iraq, and my impression was a bit weird because I landed at this base in it's called Erbil, and it's in a section of Iraq that's essentially Kurdistan. And it wasn't like what you had seen in the movies. It was like right outside of a major airport in a city. And I'm there with like a ton of other military people from all of NATO. There were a lot of people at this base. But nobody at the base was actually doing anything operational, minus my group of Rangers and a couple PJs and combat controllers with this small one of the Air Force in CV-22s, the Ospreys. So I mean, in this like a little bit of a weird environment. Yeah, it's really hot. It looks like the desert, but I don't feel like I landed in a combat zone. We would fly out and do missions in more of this combative area. A little bit through that deployment, I went to a different base closer to the Iraq-Syria border, and that felt much more like sort of like a smaller outpost. It was literally just a very small group of Rangers, a very small group of the Army's Tier 1 unit, the 160th, which is the Special Operations pilots, a couple intel people from agencies, and that was it on this like tiny little base.
Wow.
And we had these Hungarians that were our base security. And that was very remote, sort of against the mountains in northern Iraq. And that sort of gave a little bit more of the feel. That was a cool place.
How did y'all? I mean, how did you feel about having a third country on perimeter and acting as base security?
So this will most likely piss people off.
Well, I mean, you don't have to pee in anybody's Cheerios. I'm just,
but it was honestly, it was great. And I think, I don't know, I can't describe the psychology, but in the other bases where you have American security, it's a lot of young 18-year-old guys, brand new to the military. They're on these security points. I don't know. I mean, they haven't been trained that well. They're thinking about other things. They're there for a very good reason. They want to be there. They're out there doing their job. But the Hungarians were all older. They all looked like they had been in the military for 15 years. They were big, serious dudes. One guy had a shaved head, and he had, in English, killer tattooed on the back of his head in huge letters. And so the first time I saw that, I'm thinking, these are probably the guys you want doing your security.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm with you. Nothing against the 18, 19, 20-year-olds, that first term, first deployment, sitting on a perimeter, looking out into the great abyss, thinking about, Sally or mom or, something back home. I'm with you. I think I would prefer to have the older, seasoned veteran there on the perimeter. It just so happens it's from another country.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe somebody that's put rounds down range before.
I don't know I didn't know their specific backgrounds. We shot with them for one day. But I had really good experiences. I worked with special operations units from everywhere. I mean, Brits, Aussies, New Zealand, Canada. We even saw the French out there, even though we weren't allowed to interact. But I had great experiences from everybody from other countries too.
I feel like there's a story off camera for that. So we'll leave that one alone for right now.
Yeah.
So we're 1 hour in, man. I can't believe we've been at this for an hour. This has been a great conversation. I almost forgot to do this. I need to drop the sponsors plug. So
send it.
Yeah. So here we are. Attention veteran businesses. Do you want an easy way to be certified as a veteran business? You want a better way to show it off in the same hard-charging fashion as our unit patches. You want an easier way to be found, get business write-ups and interviews, social media promotion, and more? Then you need to go to AVBOA. That's Alpha Victor Bravo Oscar Alpha. avboa.net has your 6. Get access to over 20 hard-charging digital badges for web and social media shares that shows you're a certified veteran-owned business. You've earned it. Show it off. Visit avboa.net, and I'll have that scrolling here in just a second. avboa.net today. Use code KNOCK6 through Veterans Day to get a 1 to 2 paragraph social media write-up about your business for Veterans Day with any paid membership. Get your digital badge today. This offer is good through Veterans Day with the first 25 veteran businesses. So there's our plug. Let me get the banner going. There we go.
All
so now you can see AVBOA and the KNOCK6 coupon code. We're in country with the Hungarians, and you've got to do a little bit of training with some NATO folks. Field kitchen or all MREs?
No, we had so I got lucky here too. We get places kind of cush. And a lot of the places that I went, we're dealing with JSOC budgets in most of them. Okay. So JSOC is Joint Special Operations Command. Think Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, a couple others. So budgets are a black hole, essentially.
Right.
So I'm not saying the food everywhere was amazing, but it was good for, being in Iraq. Some nights we're having steaks and things like that. In this area, it was good.
Yeah.
We're also not out in the field, so the typical, this isn't every time, but the typical Ranger mission is just raids in the middle of the night. So go out for a couple hours, 4, 6, maybe 8 tops, depending on how far you're going, and then come right back. So it's dinner beforehand, then it's the mission, then it's, sunrise food or middle of the night food when we're back.
So you get your Wheaties after the mission and not before the mission.
Yeah, you get a little bit before too. It's all good.
Okay. Real eggs or powdered eggs?
Most of the places, luckily, they would do real eggs, but I definitely came across the powdered. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I did 2. I won't call them deployments. I mean, they were TDYs. 1 to Jordan and 1 to Bahrain. We had field kitchens in both. Air Force Base, of course. But we had powdered eggs, man. I was really disappointed. But that's where I learned to add things to the eggs to give them flavor. So that's when I was introduced to hot sauce. And when there was no hot sauce, mustard. And when there was no mustard, whatever else you could find sitting on a table to give these powdered eggs some flavor. Funny story, I come home from the first TDY and go home to Mama's house. She fixes a country breakfast, scrambled eggs, and I reach over and I grab the mustard tube and I put mustard on her real eggs, and she about came unglued.
I can imagine. Don't mess with her cooking.
No. What are you doing? Those are my eggs. I'm like, oh, sorry, Mama. Force of habit. Anyway, so
powdered eggs are brutal.
They are really nasty. They are. Especially if you got we had TCNs doing the cooking. So they didn't always get blended very well. So you would get like your pre-workout and you get to the bottom of the shaker and you actually have to chew the last couple of bits of the pre-workout. Anyway, that's what it was like. It was gross.
Yeah, no, I got lucky with at least on deployments. Typically the food on deployments was far superior than like anything I got in a training environment back home. Like when we would go out to the field or we did all these training trips like all over the country, Colorado, Kentucky, wherever. Food would be absolutely garbage.
Just calories, right? That's all it was.
Just calories. Or like, oh, you're about to go hike, 20 miles to the woods and do a bunch of missions all night. Here's like Skittles. The nutrition was not fully there.
No. In 96 and 97, my two TDYs, we were eating MREs before the field kitchens would open up or get built. MREs from 1987. So the the M&Ms were faded and cracked like the hard candy shell.
Yeah.
And the oatmeal sticks, they were like granola bars, but it was really just like oatmeal sticks. You could throw them at a Humvee and bust the glass. They were awful.
Anything that is meant to last that long cannot be good for you.
It can't be, right?
It's so bad. I did my absolute best after I got out of like training where I had to eat MREs or I wouldn't eat to avoid them. Like I would wait, I would eat something else. Like it just, in a job where your physical performance and mental performance matters so much, it was not worth sacrificing. I mean, those things, I don't know how many years MREs take off your life, but somebody should probably do a study on it.
I think it's probably 3 years for every year of its shelf life. I think that's what it takes away from it. I mean, the level of preservatives are just bad, right? I mean, my parents wouldn't let me eat Halloween candy that looked like that when I was a kid. So I can't believe my Uncle Sam let me do it as an adult.
Eating was another good way that in Ranger selection, they got people to quit, actually. They would you would think that like your eating time is your, this was, I guess, more of a Hell Week thing, but your eating time is like your saving grace. Most people would think, like, oh, just get to the next meal, just get to the next meal. You hear that all the time. So they'd made meals worse than the in-between time, basically like forcing it. So, it was freezing outside. The obviously couldn't heat the MREs. So, you're left with like cold sludge and bricks. And they would time everything. So it'd be like, take one thing out of your MRE bag. Okay, you have 30 seconds. So you're choking it down and they're like checking people's mouths and, doing push-ups and carrying each other because one guy couldn't finish. Then you guys throwing it up and then it's like, okay, go back. And this would be done. This could take 2 hours because you'd go through everything was an item and it was like a little mini evolution. So this also includes like the powdered coffee or the powdered like pepper, like chili powder and pepper and salt, like eating that all at one time.
Oh.
And then one night it was freezing and it was raining and they're doing this, right? Or you're eating like the sausage and gravy, but it's like cold, nasty.
Right.
On the side, 150 meters away is a fire pit. And the instructors are cooking hot dogs and they have blankets. And they're like, all you have to do is quit. You get a hot dog, a blanket, a fire, and nobody's going to talk to you. And that worked too.
Yeah. Got that carrot dangling.
Yep, dangling right there. All you got to do is quit. This can all be over.
Wow.
Get a nice hot dog.
I don't know, choking down that gravy. I might volunteer for the hot dog.
Yeah. The eating there was not fun.
Oh wow! So was there was there anything overseas, whether it was your Iraq time? You said you went to Afghanistan, and there was
Syria.
In Syria, was there? And again, not asking you to break ComSec, but was there something that happened either with you or the group of guys you were with, or somewhere on base that you saw that could have turned into an international incident? Since NATO forces were in there, a little push here, a little shove there.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how much could go into, but there's a lot of mischievous things going on overseas bases. A lot of rule breaking, some partying and having fun, some tussles.
Well, it goes back to the old days, right? Where you have a problem with somebody, you take your shirt off, you go around back behind the tent, you slug it out, you fix it, and then when you're done, you go sit down and you have a beer with them because it's over with, right?
Yeah, that happened more like within the unit. It was a little slightly more professional within some of the others, like the interactions between them. But some of them would also be integrated into our teams. So yeah, they get thrown right in there with the boys. So yeah, some tussles, some late night partying and having fun, and
I mean, you've got to let the steam out, right? I mean, there's only so much of that you can hold in. You've got to have an outlet to let that pressure go before it blows.
Downtime overseas is usually where that stuff happens. Idle hands.
Idle hands are the devil's playground. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So luckily we typically had a good amount to do, but yeah, there's always the in between time.
Yeah. All right. It's been really interesting, and there's a lot of questions that I feel like inquiring minds want to know, but also having to respect parameters and ComSec stuff. So, when you came back after your first deployment, your first rotation, and you're coming back, and now you're going to start your next eight months of training again, were you looking forward to being back already? Like, at what point in time, once you're home, your wheels down, you're transitioned your mind. Now I'm stateside. I'm home. I got to go visit family or friends. Now I'm back to training. At what point in time were you like, man, I can't wait to get back?
It's a weird dynamic where a lot of times when you're overseas after a certain period, you can't wait to get home, and then when you're home for a certain period, you can't wait to get back overseas. Mm-hmm. Typically, I would enjoy the little time off, the vacations, the having fun at home was really good. But our training cycles are really jam-packed, pretty brutal, and intense. So, I mean, I'd much rather be doing the real job than training back home. I always said, like, if I could do real missions, but then come back for the weekends and have a good time, like back in the U.S., that would be ideal. But of course, that doesn't really happen. But yeah, halfway through the deployments, you're kind of like not wishing I'm home, but thinking about it. And I got seeing what other people are doing, talking to people. It's just different being so far removed. But I did really like sort of the flow of things, and definitely on my last deployment. I was not necessarily looking forward to coming home.
Really?
I don't know I'm not saying I wanted to stay there forever, but when the time came, I was kind of like, I could use a little more of this to keep going.
Now, is that because in your mind you were already thinking, okay, when I get back, I'm just getting out. I've had my time, and when I get back, it's over. So now you're like, oh, crap, I don't really want to go home.
Yeah, I had put so much time and effort into this thing that I had built of myself being a ranger leader, right? And then I'm out there. My last couple of weeks in Afghanistan, I was like, you're going out and doing missions all the time, right? And it was awesome. I loved it, like the flow of looking back on it now. Kind of wish I could, do it all over again, but better. It was, all together in a big tent, like in this kind of remote base. Go to the gym, eat, plan the mission, execute the mission, come back, shoot the shit with the guys, go eat, hang out, do it all over again. Next day, next day, next day. And I knew it was just kind of the end for me. I knew I wasn't going to have that identity anymore. I knew I wasn't going to be with these guys as much anymore. And I knew it was the last time that what other job can you do the things that we were doing, like driving dune buggy looking vehicles out the back of helicopters in the middle of the night. And so, that was sort of the one time where I was like, I don't know how long, but I could have kept this one going.
What did you ever think about PMC?
I did.
Transitioning into that.
I did. Here's the issue with it. And I just kind of made this distinction. It was like, if I'm going to get out, it's to do something else. Okay. The military contracting, like, where is the end? What is the end goal? Like, I could keep going overseas and doing a job and getting paid more than I was in the military, but what does that? Then I eventually get to the same end state of shit. Now private contracting is over. Now what?
Right.
So it's kind of like, make the decision, stay, do the job I was there to do, or completely leave and figure out the next stage of life.
Well, I think you've done pretty well for yourself.
It's been a journey, but yeah.
I mean, well, my dad used to say, nothing worth doing will ever be easy.
Of course.
And if it was easy, then everybody would be doing it.
Yeah, no, definitely wasn't easy. And I got out in the perfect time, going straight into this COVID mess too. So that kind of amplified my need to make things right for myself and sort of follow what I wanted to do.
So you've been out just over a year now, or right out a year?
Yeah, a year and a half. Yeah,
year and a half. Okay. And in that time, you've built a coaching business, right? And if I'm reading this right, you're now a performance optimization coach.
Yeah. So it's a big word describing a coach for many things that I've sort of picked up along the way. And what I think does a disservice to a lot of people is coming at specific spaces. Like, a lot of people that I work with, they have their trainer and their nutritionist and their doctor and their therapist and their business coach, all of these different things as one. And I've really tried to build a system and a knowledge base that can look at all of these pieces as one, right? Because you are one person. It is one life. It is one system between mind and body, all of these things. So it's still a little bit foreign to people. When we talk about performance optimization, it's just wherever in your life you need optimized or better. Some people need to work in more physical health. Some people need to work in mental health, like dealing with mental issues, or some just want to build resilience, better mindsets. For some people, it's like they don't know how to design their life around their goals. A lot of it is really just holding people accountable, saying, okay, in order to feel the way I want to feel, in order to feel content in my life, this is what needs to happen every day, every week, every month. And then I will retain this feeling that I'm going for, which is why we do most things. So I act as essentially a piece of accountability, somebody that is somewhat of an expert in a lot of these areas. I've worked in physical training. I've worked under neuroscientists, did a lot of different coaching with a lot of different people. So that's kind of the holistic approach to this. And really, part of why I went down this whole rabbit hole was to first fix myself.
Okay.
You talk about that transition back to military life. So my goal here was initially selfish, like fix yourself, and then I wanted to help other people. I always had this real big yearning for, I want to help the guys coming out after me. I want them to have a plan. I want to help them with things. So I realized that I had to do that with myself first, and then I started helping other people and getting requests, and I started working with some collegiate teams with a sports psychologist, under a neuroscientist, started taking some patients. I got to work with some NFL players, all these different people, and started developing this system. And hopefully in the future, I'll be very well set up to help all the vets and first responders in their transition. And a lot of that has to do with just healing and performance and transition ways that aren't really offered. There's a lot of organizations out there that help veterans get training, help them get jobs, help them get housing, and that's amazing. But they're missing this in-between piece. I can't tell you how many guys I've talked to that get out of the military, they've got the nice corporate job, they're making a ton of money. On the outside, they should be good. Within a 2-year window of them getting out, there's like this implosion period when they don't know how to handle, the loss of prior life, not having the same purpose. A lot of it is maybe brain injury issues, at least from my community, with blast exposure, all these things. So I've really aimed to target this sort of in-between phase for people, and this can go for people transitioning careers, transitioning from sports, but obviously my heart's with military and first responders. So yeah, taking a look at everything holistically, and different types of treatments and ways of healing for people. And it's been really cool, but as I dive deeper and deeper into this, I realize how big the pool is of people that need help. I got people reaching out to me all the time. So I'm continuing. Right now, the main business is coaching people. Happy to help anybody with the bigger vision of having a program that can really fix a lot of the issues that veterans go through.
Yeah, that's awesome, and commendable. And it's not just military veterans. Not taking anything away from them. I am one. I'm not a combat veteran, but uh, I tore my rotator cuff 8 years ago, almost 7 years ago, and forced me out of law enforcement. I didn't have a choice. I was finally made sergeant, finally got a dog, and then I had this off-duty injury. It wasn't even on duty, so it wasn't protected. And once I got better, it took longer than FMLA for me to get better. So my dog had been given away, my stripes had been given away, and then I wasn't invited to come back to the department. And you want to talk about struggling. I went, like you were saying, from having a purpose, from being a leader, from having a dream law enforcement job of being a canine handler and the canine sergeant, patrol sergeant. I mean, I wore a lot of hats at that department, to having no purpose at all. And that was 8 years ago. And sometimes I still struggle with that. And so it's real. So it's not just military veterans transitioning. I think you're right. It could be anybody transitioning, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, from one career into another career. And having somebody like you that they could reach out to help guide them back onto a path may not be the ultimate right path, but back to a path to get them to the right path. You got to start with one foot, right?
Yeah, a lot of the guys that have reached out to me have been, in firefighters. A lot of people struggle, even athletes coming out, people that are transitioning from any type of career, kind of get into this sort of crisis mode. And a lot of it has to do with us putting our worth inside of a specific identity that's outside of ourselves. So I had to learn that Pearce is me. Ranger was a hat that I wore. Sometimes it has to be set to the side. It's still there. It's still a part of my story. I still have those skills, right? It's not going anywhere. But if I retain that as a part of me currently, as my present identity, then I will never be fulfilled because I no longer do that job. I'm not there. But the reality, same with you with being a law enforcement. But the reality is that you can have just as much purpose, feel just as whole, feel like you have as much of an identity without that. It's the reality. But it is difficult to build. And that's kind of where I hope to be able to guide people in is that is difficult because you have trained so much of your life to be tied to these identities, sports, the military, then law enforcement, right? And you neglect your innate nature that makes you. And so we try to help people sort of build that, get comfortable with it. There's a lot of different ways to do it. A lot of it can just be, talking, lifestyle design. A lot of it can be implementing certain modalities, learning things, psychedelic medicine, there's so many ways to sort of get to this idea of wholeness within yourself and whatever it is that you're doing. And it's an absolute game changer for people, and it can be a little bit off-putting depending on the background that you come from. But it's really just accepting things the way they are, controlling what you can control, letting go of the things you can't.
So how do people find you?
So to sort of reach out, the easiest way is, usual Instagram. It's at Pearce, PEARCE _C2. You can also email me, Pearce, PEARCE at built2evolve.com, all spelled out. Those are the easy ways. Happy to chat with anybody. If you're a vet, first responder, hopefully I'll be able to point you in the right direction to get sort of the help you need. And it's been my goal to change the way we look at all this, to change the way we look at transitions, and hopefully there's a lot of really great organizations that are doing incredible work for people right now, kind of rogue with private money. Hopefully, organizations like the VA or the militaries themselves will eventually be coming around to that as well, and I'm working on that too.
Awesome.
See if we can get directly into some of the branches.
Well, I will have that info here in the comments section, so people have a quick access while they're watching this to get a hold of you. And I've got to say, this has probably been the fastest 86 minutes in a long time. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I've said this before in a couple other episodes, but I feel like we've just barely started peeling back the onion, and there was a lot more of good nuggets of info.
We go for hours.
Yeah, we really could. Excuse me. So I would be happy to have you back on at some point in time. And
I'd love to. Let me know.
Yeah, do a part two, as they say.
Yeah, I'll try to dig up some more good stories for you.
All right. Well, I'm going to hold you to it, and have you come back, and we'll take deeper dives into deployments overseas. I'd like to learn more about rugby in those days, and some more info about what you're doing now. Maybe some case studies to help you get that information out. But in the meantime, Pearce, thank you so much for spending the last nearly 90 minutes with me on a Thursday.
Appreciate it.
And folks, this has been the Knock&Talk show. This is episode number 9. Look forward to Veterans Day this year. We're going to be doing a special Veterans Day episode with Lieutenant Colonel Gene Cushman from the United States Army Air Corps, 101-year-old fighter pilot from the Second World War. He's going to be telling us all about his time during the Berlin airlift. So look forward to that one coming out Veterans Day, 11/11/21 this year. So until then, Pearce, stay safe, be good, or be good at it.
Appreciate it, Patrick. Good to be on.
Yeah, bro. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good.